in week 2 of this Now What series, and this is the last week. Well, last week we talked about Now What, and today is kind of another Now What, and then we're going to go on to something else next week. But I had a real serious Now What moment this last week that I want to share with you. And I'm not typically someone that shares personal stories in my sermons a whole lot, but this one was just too weird not to share with you. So I was going into Walmart last week. It was kind of one of those deals where I had one thing to get, and like the Shawnee Walmart's just out of whack anyway, right? So I was about to walk in, and I'm just like, I know what I'm doing. I didn't have my headphones in or anything, but I was just like single-minded focused. So I'm just walking in, ready to go. I get right to the crosswalk, about to get into the doors, and there's a woman pushing a kind of a full basket this way. So we're passing, we're close enough where we're 4 foot or so across from each other. So, not awkwardly close, but we're really not that far away from each other. And as I pass her, she turns her head exactly 90 degrees from going forward to straight at me as I'm beside her. And she says, "Excuse me, sir." Like really kind of angry, as if we had some beef up to this point. And I was like, I know I don't know this woman, but she's pretty mad at me. And I was going to be honest with y'all. I haven't punched a woman yet, but is this the moment, right? Like, am I about to throw down with this woman in the crosswalk at Walmart? If I was going to throw down with a woman, it would be in the crosswalk at Walmart, I think. And so she says, "Excuse me, sir." And I'm like, my blood's boiling a little bit. Like this woman's got a problem with me that's deep seated, and I don't even know who she is. And then she hits me with this. She says, it's so stupid, but this is true story. Only can happen in Shawnee Walmart. She says, "Excuse me, sir, poo-poo or pee-pee?" And I was like, I don't have any idea how I'm supposed to respond to this woman right now. We're close enough that I couldn't just ignore her. It demanded a response. But I was kind of neither. But if it was one, do I want to tell you? I don't know. So I was stopped dead in my tracks. What is going on right now? So I look at her and meet her eye to eye. I have to have some response. And that's when her eyes meet me eye to eye, and they get really, really big. That kind of look you give someone when you're like, this whole situation is not what I intended, and now I'm in it, and I regret all of my life decisions that have led up to this point. That's kind of what she did, because then I kind of pieced a lot together in a very short amount of time. Behind her, there was a few littler kids that were kind of trailing her. And what I kind of gathered is she had a 5 or 6 year old that was kind of doing a little bit of a bathroom dance. And what I gathered had happened is from the checkout, he was saying, "Hey, Mama, I got to go to the bathroom." So she's like, "We'll go when you go home. We'll go at the McDonald's," whatever, right? So she's just going, and he's pestering her the whole way through here. So she wasn't turning to look at me. She was turning just to yell behind her to her son, who was pestering her about the bathroom. And so then she was trying to figure out how urgent it was, right? So she was like, "Excuse me, sir," to her, "Excuse me, poo-poo or pee-pee." And so I piece all this together, and I'm just like, I just bolt, right? I'm out of here. I don't know what to do. It's this kid had to go, so whatever he needed to do, he's doing in her back seat, and she's going to deal with that later. But I never had this moment where I knew what I was doing. I had a goal. I was set, and all of a sudden I'm going, and then this interrupts my situation, and I'm like, now what do I do? Do I fight this woman? Do I just answer her honestly? I don't really know what to do. We went on about our business, and I'm sure actually she is much more mortified by that story than I am, because she's the one that asked a stranger, a grown adult man, if he needed to poo-poo or pee-pee. This is only barely connected, but I do think it's relevant that I think sometimes that kind of resembles our faith a little bit. We'll hop in, we're good, we know where we're going, we got a plan, we're ready to go, and then something will happen that kind of throws us off of what we expected, and we're kind of well, wait, now what? Now what do I do? I had a plan, I knew what I was doing, but this isn't part of what I expected. I've had people that come to this church for 4 or 6 weeks or sometimes, and they'll stop, and I'll call them, and they'll say, "Well, I really liked it, but then this thing kind of came out of nowhere that made me not want to come anymore." We've had people leave because we do too many hymns. People leave because we don't do enough hymns. People leave because we're not political enough, because we're too political, right? It's all kind of, people are just, it's not like it's anything we're doing, but they had a plan, and then when something interrupted that plan or just caught something off guard, they're kind of like, wait, now what? Now what do I do? I think sometimes when we're in that situation, we can do like I did with this woman and just be like, "No, thank you," and move on down the road. I just hope with church that we don't do that. I think a now what situation in church is actually an opportunity to lean in and be like, Okay, but really now what? And even though this thing is unexpected, maybe that's just something to wake me up enough to think about, okay, well, what can I do next? Or what am I supposed to be doing next? So I think in our faith lives, anytime we kind of have this thing, we're saying, now what? That we need to really work to answer that question. Last week we talked about that once you kind of start following Jesus, you start making choices that then hopefully result in your sanctification is what we talked about. That, right? Things like regular church attendance and Bible reading and quiet time, these things that you do in your life that position you so that the fruit of sanctification can be produced, but they're kind of individual type things. But I do want to make something very clear. The journey of sanctification and the path of looking more and more like Jesus, you will not stay on that very long unless you have people involved with you going in that same direction. And here at our church, listen, me as the pastor, I've got to be honest. It's harder here than it used to be to get that connection. When we first started, we were meeting in a bakery downtown, and everyone was sitting around tables. So whether you knew somebody there or not, you were going to be sitting across the table from somebody and getting to know them. It was very community focused. It was you had to meet somebody new. It was great. And even when we used to have one service, at least you were here with all of the same type of people. You could kind of see them, right? But now that we have two services, it's harder than ever to get connected. And I hear people that have gone here for a long time keep telling me, Wopsle, I feel like sometimes I show up and there's so many people that I don't know. And I'm like, well, first of all, praise God. Yes, let's keep doing that. But also think about how hard it is for the new people to show up when they don't know even where the bathrooms are, what the building's like, right? This is an intimidating place to show up right now. And we have to own that and realize that. Because the Bible makes it abundantly clear that we're supposed to be doing things together. In fact, God himself is in community with himself, right? Remember all through creation where it says, he says, let us create man in our own image, right? He's saying like, we're in community together. There's three of me here. So he set that up and we got to keep doing the same thing. Listen, we're starting in the same place that we did last week. Hebrews 10 verses 19 through 25. If you remember, I told you you can make a note about this. It's a great place to say, if I don't know what's next, if I don't know now what, Hebrews 10, 19 through 25 is like a hyper-focused, clear thing that I should be doing next. So the last part of that, Hebrews 10, verse 25, says it this way. It says, let us hold unswervingly to the hope we profess, for he who promised is faithful, right? Let's hold on to that. We talked last week about moving this rudder so that we can go toward righteousness, right? Let us hold on to that. For he who promises faithful. Then it goes to talking about us together, verse 24. And let us consider how we may spur one another on toward love and good deeds, not giving up meeting together as some are in the habit of doing, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day approaching, right? We're talking about, if last week we said, now what? It's us kind of wrangling our lives into this pursuit of holiness and this sanctification. Well, then now here, Hebrews 10 is like, well, then what does it look like for each of us to encourage somebody else that's on this path of sanctification? Because of your involvement in their lives, are they going to be more likely to be sanctified and stay on the path God has for them, or less likely? Well, he's saying we should be encouraging and spurring and stirring that up in people's hearts. So today we're actually going to talk about very specifically about this church kind of at the end and what we're doing, right? We can't stop meeting together. We have to keep on. We have to increase that even, I think. But we got to make a sound biblical case for why that's important first. So we're going to kind of springboard off of this Hebrews 10 and go to Philippians 2. Galatians, Ephesians, Philippians. There's a lot of Ians about a little after the Gospels in your New Testament, if you want to get there. Well, before we get to Philippians 2, we need a little context back to Philippians 1, though, okay? So Philippians 1 talks a lot about suffering well for the gospel, okay? And a guy named Paul wrote it, and Paul was in prison for preaching the gospel when he's writing this letter about suffering well for the gospel. It's full of this encouragement to choose our actions deliberately. And I think it says a lot about don't let your circumstances dictate what you do. Like choose what you're going to do independent of those circumstances. So verses 3 through 11 talk about living a life of unity and affection. Verses 12 through 17 in chapter 1 talk about a life that preaches the gospel. When people look at your life, can they see the gospel? That's kind of our goal. Verses 18 through 26 talk about this, a life that rejoices and hopes and labors for the kingdom in all circumstances. Verse 21 specifically has the famous line where Paul says, to live is Christ and to die is gain. Right? He says, as long as I'm living, I'm going to do it the best I can, that the gospel will be reflected in my life. To live as Christ and to die, well, that's going to be even better. That's what Paul says in this part, right? And so then he finishes, then he says, and finally, a life that is lived by faith in good times and in bad, right? So it's all that context that Paul kind of toward the end of Philippians 1 writes this verse that I think really sums up this whole chapter. He says, whatever happens, conduct yourselves in a manner worthy of the gospel of Christ. Like whatever happens, the best stuff's going on, cool. Worship God with it. The worst stuff's going on, worship God with it. Whatever happens, whatever's going on in your life, keep on going on that path of sanctification. Conduct yourselves in a manner that's worthy of the calling that you have on your life. So based on Philippians 1, our goal is that our actions would look like Jesus and that we wouldn't let outside circumstances change that, right? We don't let the circumstances change how we feel about God. We let how we feel about God change how we view our circumstances, right? That's what Philippians 1 is. Which then takes us into Philippians 2. Starting in verse 1, he says, therefore. Now, we've already seen what that therefore is there for, right? Philippians 1 says, don't let your circumstances dictate your actions. Therefore, if you have any encouragement from being united with Christ, if any comfort from his love, if any common sharing in the Spirit, if any tenderness and compassion, you kind of see what he's doing here. I feel like he's kind of using playful language. He's like, if God has made any impact in your life at all, even the tiniest impact, if God has done anything, because clearly if we would acknowledge it, God has done a lot in our lives, right? Like God has made himself clear. He has blessed us. He has moved. He has put people in our lives. He has taken people out of our lives. God has done a lot in our lives. But here Paul's kind of like, hey, like if God has done if you could look at any part of your life that is better because of God, if you've ever had any hope or comfort from him, like he's like, if anything in your life is better because of God, even if it's just on the tiniest thing, then what should we do? Verse 2, he says, well, then make my joy complete by being like-minded, having the same love, and being one in spirit and of one mind. He's talking about how we are together. Be like-minded with one another, right? Have the same love together for yourselves and for those outside of these walls, and being in one spirit and of one mind, like being united. He says, if any of you have experienced God's goodness in your life, then you have a lot in common with other people who have experienced God's goodness in their life as well. So you should be like-minded with those people. And then verse 4, he finishes it up saying, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interests of others. Each of you helping the others on their path of sanctification. So once God impacts your life, like we talked about last week, you should start being obedient, right? To get baptized, to show up and all that kind of stuff. But let's say, okay, well now I'm doing that, now what? Well, I think now what is that we should be increasingly finding fellowship with others. If you want to continue to follow Jesus more and more closely going forward, then you need to travel together with other people that are going to help you go to where you're going. Other families that have similar situations or similar makeup, right? The most encouraging families to me right now are usually the ones that I'm in the stands with, watching our kids do some random thing, right? Like that's the people that we're doing life with, and they encourage me. Then this next verse from Philippians, I think, puts it all in an exclamation point on this idea. Verse 5 says, in your relationships with one another, have the same mindset as Christ Jesus. Now, Paul goes on to kind of define some of the mindset of Christ Jesus, which I think is helpful. But kind of for our aspects here, I just want to say, like, in our relationships with one another, we should be thinking about each other the way that Jesus thinks about us, and also the way that Jesus values relationships. Because I'm saying that you need to go through life with people, but if anybody in the history of time didn't need people to get through life, it would have been Jesus, right? He is God with skin on, here walking around. He's the one that could have done it, and he chose to do life with a bunch of other people. Right, he had the 12 that were following him around. The actual group was a little longer than that. He had 72 that he was really close to, that he kind of helped start the church with. Like, Jesus had people around him. In fact, the night that he was arrested, he was going away to pray because he was having a tough time, and he was nervous and he was scared and all kinds of things. And in the toughest time Jesus had in his life, he took his 3 best friends to pray with him in the garden. And so if Jesus needed friends to help him through his tough times, then you need friends to help you through your toughest times. I think sometimes for our toughest times where we kind of hunker down and we're like, I'll get back to my community once I fix myself, once I get through this thing, once I endure it. No, you got to bring people in if Jesus did. In fact, kind of if Jesus needed to go through life with a small group, then so do you. You need people in your life. Around here, we call our small groups community groups just because we're community church, so they're community groups. Kind of any group that meets outside of Sunday morning, we kind of label the idea of community group. We don't get too caught up in terminology. You don't have to label something a certain way. But there are all types of ways that people get together. I want to run through you 4 that are kind of the biggest umbrellas just real quick as a church. Kind of the lowest level entry, we just have these kind of shared interest groups is what I'll call them for now. Things like we have a group of women that work out and do just a little Bible study. We have a grief group that, people that have experienced grief, they have that commonality, so they meet together. It could be anything. I think this summer I'm going to start a disc golf group because I love disc golf. And whenever I go there, usually my kids are hanging out at the park in the middle. It's just like a good time to go throw discs. And so if you play disc golf, let's play some disc golf together, right? It could be anything. We've got guys that have been talking about getting together and shooting guns. Like, I don't own guns, but if y'all want to shoot together, that'd be great. I'll come and shoot one of your guns maybe, or watch you shoot, or be scared in the corner. But whatever it is, like, you guys get together, right? Like, it's just an interest group, just a chance to get together with people that have a shared interest. And there's really value in that, even if it's not the most spiritual thing of your week. Then we have what we really usually are talking about when we call community groups. They're kind of these doing life together kind of groups. We have this community group discussion guide. Every Sunday, I put these together and email them to people. This is like in response to this sermon that I'm preaching right now. This is questions and scriptures and just kind of, this is what I hope the discussion is after this sermon. I email these out. I think 17 people get this right now every single Sunday. If you want this at all, just let me know. There are more of these on the info table, and you can grab one, and here it says you can email this email, and I'll just put you on there. Some people just use this for their devos in the middle of the week or whatever. But if you're like, yeah, I would love to talk more about this sermon, well, then get a few people together, and I'll email you this, and like you just read it, you've got it, you're good to go. So that's kind of what that, like the kind of a community group. Usually those meet every Sunday or every week or every couple of weeks. We have like 5 of those in our church right now meeting. Some of them are open, some of them aren't, but you could either start something new, or you could ask me if something you're looking for is open, and I might help you get plugged in there. We have big groups, we have small groups, all kinds of different stuff. But that's kind of one of those when we say community group, usually we're meaning a regular group of people that meet together to go over this sermon or whatever Bible study topic you would like to go through. Speaking of, we also have Bible studies as well, right? Like a specific group, like our women's Bible study that meets on Wednesdays is kind of our biggest one. But Monday Night Fellowship, this men meeting tomorrow night, that's kind of what that is too. So just a chance for people to get together and study the Bible. I kind of like to say that our community groups that meet in homes and stuff, those are kind of like 80% relationship and 20% Bible. Like you want to get to know people, and then and then if you want to sprinkle some Bible in there too. Whereas Bible studies are kind of more like 80% Bible, 20% relationship. So it's kind of helps you know the difference between those two. And the last thing I'll mention for this part is classes. Last semester, we did a parenting class that I think went really well. People are still talking about it, and we need to do that again. We've been talking about trying to get up a financial peace university class. So it's kind of ideas like, if you hear we're doing that class and you're interested in biblical finances, well, then you sign up for that class, right? So classes kind of have a beginning and an end. It's kind of a thing you take and then you're done with, and then you don't take it anymore. Growth track would be one of our classes. But those are kind of the big 4 umbrellas that we do. Interest groups, kind of community groups, life groups, small groups, Bible studies, and then classes. And those are actually all on this card too. So if you want to grab this card and remember the things we talked about, they're all on here. Let me run through just a few things going on this week alone, because I think it's pretty interesting. Today, again, in just a minute, we're going to be out there doing lunch on the lawn. Again, a big purpose of this is the best way I've found to meet somebody new, for me to meet another dad, is for me to be standing there watching my kid on the bouncy house, and this guy to be watching his kid on the bouncy house, and me to be like, bouncy houses, huh? Like, check it out. They're bouncing, man. It's crazy in there. My kid's like crying, but he's also got a kid in a noogie. They're going crazy in there. So that's really like the reason why we put something like this on, is because with 2 services and with a growing church, we need to get shoulder to shoulder. We got tables out there. They got like 6 or 8 chairs around them. So if you're sitting at a table, invite somebody you don't know to sit at your table so you can get to know them. That's really the purpose of Lunch on the Lawn, is that we could get to know some people in our church that maybe we don't know. So that's happening right now. Like I said, tonight and kind of all through this week, there will be small groups that are meeting throughout our church, throughout our community. We have some that meet in restaurants, some that meet in homes, some that meet here at the church sometimes, and every place in between. So those are kind of things that are happening. Now, tomorrow night, like I said, is Monday Night Fellowship is back, the return. This is when a chance for our guys to get together, just kind of hang out. We eat some pizza, we get to know each other, and then we do have a little kind of Bible study that we're doing. We're going through a thing from the NFL that I'm really excited about, because if I have anything to say in it, it's usually going to have to do with the NFL. So 6:30 to 8:30, pizza, just all guys. We kind of say high school and older is kind of who the target is. So show up here tomorrow night. We got that going on. Tuesday, we have that grief group that I was talking about. It meets at 1:30 here at the church. You don't have to define your grief. You're not going to compare your grief. You can't be like, well, that person lost somebody and I didn't, you know what grief is if you're experiencing it. It's a place to come and do that together with people that are also have experienced or are experiencing grief. So that happens every other Tuesday, but this Tuesday is one that's happening. So if you wanted to show up to that group, you can make sure and get on their communication and know when, make sure that you're on that meeting. Wednesday morning, we have women's Bible study. We always do. It's at 9:30 here. We do have childcare at that, which I love because usually it ends up being kind of young mothers that are home with their babies come here and get a chance to put their kids in there and come in here. And then it's usually kind of empty nesters that don't have, maybe they're retired or whatever. And so what a great time to get together with young mothers and these empty nesters women and to study the Bible together. Like it's the best thing that we can possibly do, right? So they're going over spiritual disciplines right now. That's Wednesday morning. Wednesday night, we have our community youth. Again, we have it coming up this Wednesday, and then next Wednesday is that fifth grade kind of welcome. We want every fifth grader in town to be here to see what our youth ministry is like. So community youth meets Wednesdays because our young people need a chance to sharpen their relationships just as much as the rest of us do. Also Wednesday at 6 p.m., that's whenever our Jesus and Jim Hare group meets. That's going to be scanning. You can find it on our Facebook too, but there's a group meet that they're kind of communicating all this. It meets out at Debbie Risley's house Wednesdays at 6. And you don't have to be a workout guru. You just got to be willing to show up. It's just women kind of working out and talking about Jesus together. That's Wednesdays at 6 now in this semester. And then, lastly, we're starting something new that I'm excited about. Our girls do a better job of getting together than our guys do. So I'm wanting to give our guys a few more experiences. So we're starting this Friday. We're starting a new group that's called the Rodeo Group. I thought it was a cool name, but it does stand for Really Old Dudes Eating Out. That's what the Rodeo Group is. And you may be saying, well, Wopsle, what's a really old dude? The answer is clear. Anybody 20 years older than you is an old dude. So I say all the time, right? When I left here when I was 18, there were these guys in like their 30s or 40s that were like old dudes. And then I moved back here and I was 40. And I was like, I'm not sure if they were old then, but they're definitely old now, like without a doubt. And when I'm 60, guess what? I'll be like, well, 60 is not that old, but 80, so it just always moves. Here's the deal. I'm going to be there. There's no definition of who a really old dude is, right? You ask the right person, every guy in here is going to be old to somebody. But the point is it's the lowest entry. Like we can just get together and eat out about once a month at least. We're just going to kind of pick a place and go. I didn't put a time on here. This one's going to be at 8 a.m. at Cowpokes. It's just show up. We'll sit at a few different tables. We'll kind of have some discussion starters, but this is not a Bible study. It's just, let's get some really old dudes together and just eat out together at Cowpokes. So you'll be able to see every month we'll kind of announce, hey, this time we're meeting here at this time. Sometimes we might do lunch just to mix it up. But Rodeo Group, it's going to be the hottest thing. You girls are going to be so jealous you can't come to our Rodeo Group. Sorry, men only. Really old dudes. Right, yeah, really old. Rodeo. You have to start your own Rodeo Group. But now, let me be clear. This week is intentionally pretty packed with stuff because of the sermon this week. And I want you to know, this week you have a lot of opportunities to try to show up and get to know somebody. But most of these things really do happen every week or every other week. They're pretty regular. And I got to be honest, our schedule is not quite as busy as I would like it to be. We need more of these sermon discussion groups to take what we're learning here on Sunday and to dig in and to keep talking about it. I would love to have 10 more of those is actually my goal. People doing that. We'd love to have more classes to get on the schedule, right? Get that financial piece we've been trying. We need to get that scheduled so that people can come to it. This summer, we're adding weekly meetups for kids to get the kids, outside of the house when we're not sure what to do, get them up here hanging out because we want to create this community that exists outside of just Sunday morning. Got a couple of tools I just want to run through for you real quick. I talked about this card. It's got this QR code on it that will take you to our website that is kind of the special groups section. Right now, on that place, you can sign up for Right Now Media, but we're working on, it says coming soon right now, this group finder where you can go on there and you can be like, I am free on Tuesday nights and Thursday nights. What opportunities are there? And it'll kind of filter those out and show you. Or I want men's groups. What all men's groups are there, right? It'll have rodeo, it'll have men's fellowship, it'll have maybe small groups or whatever. So this tool on our website will help you. You can go there. And then if what you're looking for doesn't exist, there'll be a button that says, you want something to exist? Be the change you wish to see in the world, right? Hit go and you can start it. So we've got that. Again, we've got these discussion guides that you can grab one of these off of the info table and just kind of look at it, what you know. We do it every week. And so the more people that look at it, the better. It makes it worth my time. Told you we've got Right Now Media that will hopefully influence not only your personal discipleship, but if you want to start something, the content's right there. You don't have to learn how to teach. You just got to learn how to push play on your TV. And then on on this thing and on this card and on everything that we have this email that reminds you it's groups@communitychurchok.com. Groups at, and then our kind of long communitychurchok.com. If you ever have any questions, I have somebody that emailed me that said, I'm ready to start a group and I don't have anybody else to be in it with me. So let me know when some people come and I'll start it okay, well, cool. So they have a group that's just kind of waiting for people to jump on board with. So even if you email me something like that, that's like, well, so this is kind of a big nothing burger, but I think I've got something going on. Let me know, because there might be other things moving on that I might happen to know, that we can get you all plugged in together, right? So those are just a few of the tools, but mostly just, you can always let me know and I can point you to the right tool. Because here's what I know. Here's what I want to finish with. When we started our church in the bakery, we were full from that very first Sunday, and people came up and they were like, Wopsle, now what? Like, now what are we going to do? Look how full we are. Well, turned out Danny Morgan was generous enough to let us come in here and meet in this place. There used to be a wall right here we talk about sometimes, and so we had about 60 or 80 chairs over here. Very quickly, we were too full in there, and everyone came and said, Wopsle, now what? Like, now what are we going to do? I don't know, let's tear down this wall. And we kind of figured out how to do that and worshiped with a brown toilet up here for a long time, which was so awesome, so distracting, so great. We put a reserved for Brian Baker sticker on it, which was one of our elders. We're like, here you go, this is your seat, Brian. And then we filled up this space, right? We filled up this big space, and everyone came to well, so now what? Now what are we going to do? So we went to 2 services to make twice as much room. And now both of those services are getting pretty full. And so people are coming in saying, now what? Now what? Well, so what's next? What are we going to do now? Well, I want to say pretty confidently to you that the answer to now what right now for us is community groups. It's not another space yet. It's that what marks this season of our church will be when we started a bunch of groups, when we got people together, and whenever we made community outside of Sunday morning a priority. And yes, listen, we are on the very early stages of looking for some land. We realize at some point we will get to build a building and it'll be great. It'll serve the community. That's going to be a great time. But I will say this with no apologies. We have no business building a space for more people if we're not connecting on a meaningful level with the people that are already coming. We will not become the church that we are meant to be. We don't need any room for more people if we can't do what we're supposed to be doing as a church on our own. That gets to know people, that welcomes people in, that looks for the outsider, that shakes the hand of the person that you don't recognize on a Sunday morning. We have to be that kind of church before we need to be building any other space. Really, what's next for us right now is this. It's becoming that Philippians 2:2 church that Paul mentioned when he said it this way. He said that we would be being like-minded, having the same love, and being one in spirit and of one mind. That's what's next for us, that our minds would be similar. We don't have to be the same, but we would be like-minded in our pursuit. We would have the same love in the way that we treat other people. They would be like, you act like those people from community church, right? Being one in spirit and of one mind. So that way, whenever the Lord does lead us to do something or build something or buy something or whatever he should do, like we will be of one spirit and one mind so much that it'll be clear that we are walking forward in unity in that. And how do we become this Philippians 2:2 church? We do it by making relationships and fellowship a priority. And we do that by consistently showing up outside of just our Sunday mornings. And when we start doing that on a regular basis, well, my friends, that is when we are going to need to build a bigger church. I look forward to that day. Let me close this in prayer. We wrap up this morning. God, we're so thankful that you would work in our lives in such a way that brings us to an understanding of you and your grace in our lives and your forgiveness that you poured out, God. And now so many of us can find ourselves standing there saying, now what? I hopped in, I got baptized, I did the thing, I said yes, and I don't know what's next. God, would you remind us that first we just continue to pour into you and to look to you and to wrangle our lives into a sanctified path, God. And would you also remind us that we cannot do it alone, that you never intended for us to do it alone. You gave us this imperfect gift of the church made up of imperfect people to be the path that would lead us to sanctification, God. So would you continue to surround us by those people? Would you show us the areas that we could engage in and the small groups that we could show up to, God? Would you challenge us in the areas that we need to start something, God, that for your name's sake, maybe there is a group that needs to exist, that it's on our hearts to start it, God. Would you give us the boldness to follow through in the areas that you would have us to lead for the sake of somebody that we don't even know yet who's going to come to that, God? God, we thank you for working in our lives and for working in this church and for building this church the way that you have. Help us to continue to be found faithful to you and faithful to one another as we grow in our relationships. We humbly ask all this in Jesus' name. Amen. Let me leave you with this blessing. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine on you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace. Amen. Hey, our church is about two things, right? Number one, loving God as a community. That's what this whole morning will continue to be about. Loving people. Number two is loving people in our community. Let's go do that with the same love as we go through this week.